listen to me, don't listen to you. Like, who knows? Because I even started to get into like the science, because I think even Sayers indexed something on Greenman Info, whatever. And I was like, who cares anymore? Like, that's not a method of internalizing what is relevant to me. I have to experience it and then I will know. And that's true of everything right now. You know, you have to experience what you're feeling called to explore, because the guru model is dead.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Oto Gomes Crypto Show. I'm your host, Oto Gomes. And today we have a very special guest, Dr. Kelly Brogan. I'm so excited to have you guys listen to this episode. It was an amazing interaction to have with her. She is just embodiment of love and connection and vibration and movement. And I just loved talking to her. Kelly Brogan, MD, is a holistic psychiatrist, author of the New York Times bestselling book, A Mind of Your Own, Own Yourself, the children's book, A Time for Rain, and co-editor of the landmark textbook, Integrative Therapies for Depression. She is the founder of the online healing program Vital Mind Reset and the membership community Vital Life Project. She completed her psychiatric training and fellowship at NYU Medical Center after graduating from Cornell University Medical College and has a BS from MIT in systems neuroscience. She is specialized in a root cause resolution approach for psychiatric syndromes and symptoms. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to Kelly Brogan. So tell me some more about your journey and how you got to this point. And, you know, my audience, I try to give as many perspectives as possible about this reality. And yours is, I mean, I'm sure people have seen you several times in several interviews, but I like to do a specific flavor of going through that journey. So if you can just share with me your journey and what that red pill moment was for you that really shifted you away from this matrix.
So I've been thinking about this a lot, right? Because we all have somebody in our life who maybe it's not about like specific pandemic related information, but maybe it's related to some other, red pill topic. I know that, my partner, Sayer, and I have like World War VIII level, debates about things that like, my friends laugh about, but literally it's like brought us to the brink of even like considering ending the relationship, because it's that ontologically divisive, right? So everyone has some taste right now of what it is to recognize that we are each in our own individual, I call them reality tubes. Like we're all, each of us in our own, dimensional experience that we are responsible, for curating and protecting and maintaining and developing and evolving. And when we see and feel that we don't share that with somebody beloved to us or intimate, it brings up a lot of our childhood stuff, right? And so this process of like feeling that we have to coercively awaken another, right? Like, wake up, it's like, it comes from a place it comes from the same energy that we are awakening from, I think, right? Like that hierarchical, control-based, you must do as I say, you must be as I, need you to be kind of energy. And so even awakening to that, this like holofractal reality of like, we're always, representing that which we're judging, and we're experiencing on the outside that which is inside. And that journey, that experience of like the onion ever peeling over and over and over again, really began for me medically. It began as it does for so many doctors who've left the cult. I mean, there aren't actually that many who have truly left, in my opinion. But for those of us who are mostly out the door, it started when we had a personal experience with the gross limitations of the model that we had invested in representing. And, I was postpartum. my first pregnancy about 9 months or so. And on a routine physical, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And I had been already specialized in treating with psychotropics pregnant and breastfeeding women. So that's how much I believed in the conventional model, is that my personal patient population was pregnant women and women who were breastfeeding. And I would prescribe them medications like Klonopin and lithium and, all manner of antidepressants and hypnotics. And the reasoning was that if I didn't do that, their illness would have all of these consequences. Right. So it's like a false dichotomy, like do this, because if you don't do this, then there's only one trajectory, which is continued neglect and associated horrors. Right. So it's framed in a very, deceptive way. And we could argue about whether that's intentionally crafted or whether it's just sort of the nature of the system and what it reflects. But at that time, I wasn't like a bad person then, and now I'm a good person, like I still was someone who wanted to help people. And when I look at why I wanted to help people, it's not because I'm, some Mother Teresa was now that you go down these rabbit holes.
Now that we're
like she ain't even what we okay. So what's a better example? It's like an angel. Okay? Like I'm sorry, angel. It's like so ingrained, right? The brainwashing is intense.
Yep.
When I look back at like why I even became a doctor, I think like many, it's because I have such an intense intolerance for human suffering, including my own, and so little experience with it. That I felt best when I was armed and empowered with a toolkit that assured me I would know exactly what to do the moment someone in front of me was suffering or struggling. So, and I worked a suicide hotline when I was in college at MIT, and, I was trained to know what to do when somebody literally was, standing on the top of a building, which actually happened. We know how to fix this, this brokenness inside of you. And so that really took me quite a way. I went to 10 plus years of training in this system that led me to experience myself as having some degree of mastery over, the dilemma of human suffering. And meanwhile, it's like that whack-a-mole game. It's like wherever you punch it, it pops up somewhere else. So, but that's what we have another medication for and another medication. And it's just this management hamster wheel that both the patient and the clinician collude in spinning, So when I was diagnosed, I felt this resistance, this voice that was like, oh, hell no, I am not taking Synthroid for the rest of my life. I mean, it wasn't from some place of like, oh, I love my body and I know it can heal naturally. No, nothing like that. It was merely logistical and framed almost as like laziness. Like I can't deal with that. I'm not going to CVS.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was not. I also had a natural birth, not because I was connected to my like divine feminine essence, because of the science. Because I was, and I'm working on, my shadowy aspects as a know-it-all, right? And so I had an OB, then moved to a midwife because I felt like this OB doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. I know the data better than her on episiotomies and, fetal monitoring and stuff like that. I've done the research because I want to know, and I know how to read PubMed articles, right? And I switched to a midwife probably because I felt like, oh, I'm the MD. She's not going to question me. I bet it was something like that. And ultimately, I had a natural birth because I felt the data supported that. That's literally why I did it. And it was hard as hell. Like it was not like gratifying or like deeply it was like a marathon, like it felt like I ran a marathon and I did the damn thing, and it was not until I was diagnosed and had that sort of like screech, like this sort of like, what do I do? This sucks. Like I don't want to do what I know to do. So here's my cognitive dissonance bifurcation, like I either go the way I already know and I don't want to do that. first of all, I know how these women feel because I've treated them as patients, and I know they never feel well on synthetic hormone, and they never get off it. So no thanks. I'm in my, like, whatever I was in my 20s or whatever the hell I was, 30 or anyway. And the other option was like the wild unknown. So, at that fork of cognitive dissonance, when you choose not to deny what is being presented as a rupture in the fabric of your reality, you must relume your reality, so that's why it takes some level of readiness and fortitude to go that path. So, like, that's what I mean. Like, how could we really reasonably expect this of, like, our average family member or partner or whatever? You can't expect that of somebody. The ingredients for readiness to depart from the familiar and all that attends that, acceptance and tribalism and all of the psychology of, like, mastery over your reality. And I know what's going on. I got this. You leave all of that to go who knows where. And you could be shamed and blamed for going off into this, like, on this renegade path. Like, it takes a lot. So that was my moment where I went to a naturopath, which is hilarious that I did that, because I was, like, very, very super secular, like, super allopathically minded. I was, like, good at prescribing, like, I was sort of like, in my training, it's almost like a cowboy kind of energy, like 5 meds, 7 meds. I got this. I know how to do it. Like, I know what the interactions are, I know how the liver metabolizes this and, which ones are renally excreted, whatever, like all that mumbo jumbo, pseudoscience. It really is, around pharmacology. And I turned away from that and I went to a naturopath and I changed my diet. That's all I did. I didn't start meditating. I didn't start exercising. I had started the sort of, like, conscious consumerism around products at that point, but that's it. And I watched in black and white on paper, which is the kind of experiential, data I required at that point. My numbers, my antibodies go from the high 2000s and my TSH go from 20 to the normal range. I watched it in black and white, and I could never unsee that. I could never unknow that. And wow. I came from the generation, I don't know what it's like now, I can't even imagine, but medical school training where there was 1 hour of nutrition education. And it's pretty much like, by the way, if you're diabetic, like, don't get a big gulp size soda, like, it's like literally, no, I'm not even kidding. Or like, here's how you order a low salt diet. Like, it's so remedial.
That's so, like, you have poop all over you, but let's just get this small tiny rag and just try to wipe it away. It's like,
oh my God. So it was amazing. And I watched this happen because I'm Italian American. My mom's from Italy. And
oh, me too. Well, I'm Italian Brazilian, but yes.
Oh my gosh. I didn't realize that. Oh, that's cool. Where in Italy?
Well, my dad's lineage is Italian. My mom is Portuguese. So Italy, I don't even know. I honestly don't know. Oh, Venice. Oh, it's Venice.
So
yeah.
It's Tuscany. Yeah. My mom is from Tuscany, but that's a spicy combination you got going on there.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
I was raised eating literally 3 meals a day, bread and cheese. So bread and cheese all day, every day. So, I took out gluten and dairy, and I don't know, that was like all it took pretty much. And when I saw it happen, you would think I would be like, wow, this is a recidivistic condition that's supposed to last my whole life. And I put it into remission, in the space of like a year. I think I was on, there's like versions of natural hormone basically for maybe like, I don't remember, 9 or 10 months, and came off it. I've never been on it since. And you'd think I would have been so pumped and so excited, like that this whole potential space of, healing and moving beyond diagnosis opened up for me experientially, and I could share this with everyone in my practice. I was pissed. The rage, which obviously has been in my body, maybe from many generations prior, but at least from my childhood, that bubbled up inside of me. It was like Joan of Arc shit, like I literally like took my sword out and I was like, I'm going in, I will slay the pharma beast by myself naked, like watch out.
Wow.
And And I wrote my first book from that energy. I spent years like minimally sleeping, obsessively writing. I wrote hundreds of blogs, researching conferences, like autodidact mode to the max, just like teaching myself everything that I did not learn from, the blood, sweat, and tears, indentured servitude, and potentially like, trauma-induced chronic illness of my training. And I was pissed that nobody ever told me that you could put an autoimmune condition into remission. Of course, we know why they didn't happen to mention that, about the power of nutrition and just like any even scientific aspects of biology around the connectedness of these systems. I learned that the field of psychoneuroimmunology was like sort of conceptualized in the 1990s.
Wow.
I never heard the word one time in my training. I specialize as a psychiatrist, I don't know. So I really was like fueled by rage and righteous indignation for many years.
Wow, this is amazing. So what was the year that happened, or how many years ago?
So I was diagnosed in 2010. End of 2009, 2010.
And then you wrote your first book right after that, a year or so?
It was a while after that. It was in 2010. So shortly thereafter, I was gifted a book called Anatomy of an Epidemic by a therapist friend. And she's like, what do you think about this book? It just came out. Like, it's like, people are like up in arms about it. And, you prescribe these meds. So what do you think? And it's written by investigative journalist Robert Whitaker. And you know how, these sort of constellation events in your life, all of these variables coalesce. And if even one of them was missing, the path forward would be different. Right. So because I had already started to awaken to the potential to self-heal, I read this book, which I literally would have thrown in the garbage can without even turning a page, like a year prior, even 6 months prior. I read this book, blew my mind, literally, and I never prescribed medication again.
Wow.
Never, to this day. Meaning that I never started anybody on medication again. And from that point, I turned the last page. I remember I was crying on the subway reading this, just realizing my whole thing, the whole house of cards.
You have to grieve. Yeah. You have to grieve that loss of going through all that.
The finality, like there's no going back. And can I hold space for people who are, actively, so-called psychotic and suicidal and not prescribe them medication? Like, what would I do instead? And so it was from that, sort of like, I don't know, energy that I dedicated my practice to helping people come off these medications. And that, that was my practice for a decade. And, it was a training ground, like a real-time training ground that synced with my own spiritual process of beginning to enter into dark spaces myself, and having my own, sort of dark night of the soul again and again and again. But no, it wouldn't be for actually several years. My first book came out in 2016. So I had to get a lot of experience under my belt before I felt like I had anything interesting to say, and before I could definitively state that these medications are toxic and rife with adverse effects that you're not going to be consented for by your prescribing physician. And there is a better way, and you can come off them safely. And I couldn't say any of those things, before I had years of experience seeing, what that process looked like. It's a hero's journey. It's archetypal hero's journey to come off these meds.
And I love it because the way you described it, like you pulled your sword and you had that energy when you wrote that book. I mean, that is a training ground. Like, I feel like you're unconsciously, maybe not, maybe you're consciously saying this, but like that energy has driven you to the point where you're at now to, speak out and fight for what's happening. So actually that's probably my next question. For me, I started my healing journey around 2016, 17. And I had my own dark night of the soul and had to go through all that darkness to, see the light and go through the healing process. And when 2020 came around, it was very obvious to me. It was very obvious what was going on. It was like, What are you? They were doing this on a tiny scale. Now it's global.
Yeah.
So how was it for you? When did it become real for you that what was happening globally was something that you've already experienced on a smaller scale?
Mm-mm. Well, I guess it's an important bit of context that kind of soared aloft energy only took me so far before it started to like eat me alive. It took me to about 2015. And I had written the book, because the publication process takes forever. So I'd finished that treatise, with all the references and all the like FU pharma kind of vibes in there. It's like exploding pill on the cover. It was like blacklisted. It was a whole dramatic thing. And my mentor, Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez, whom I met in 2014, I became the first and ultimately only MD that he took under his wing directly, clinically in the office to expose, to his work, which I continue to state is some of the most powerful, medical achievement of, this century. And it's because he had a practice for 27 years devoted to non-interventionist, non-pharmaceutical, non-radiologic treatment of metastatic and terminal cancers with long-term outcomes, right? So he always would say, match my cases. And he was very invested in validation from the cult of medicine. He passed away in 2015 very suddenly. And I do think that there are, well, I don't need to get into what
I know exactly what you're going to say. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a crisis point for me because I almost like brought him into sort of like vaccine activism that was very live at the time. 110 bills rolled out across the country to strip religious exemptions. And that was sort of the beginning of like, how dare they, kind of do this. And anyone in the vaccine activism world saw that coming, for many, many years prior. Yeah. So, when he passed, I was at a like super, super dark, low place. Felt like now that he's gone, I have no one who can protect and guide me. He's like a father figure for me. And I knew that to save myself, I had to pivot. And so at that point, pivoted away from exposing, kind of activism, like, here's what you haven't been told about statins and birth control and vaccines and antibiotics.
Like that energy of trying to prove and trying to save, and it's like a desperation energy. Yeah, it is. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It is. And there's that Nietzsche quote that says like, you become the monster you're fighting. And I saw it. I had so many colleagues. We ran a group at the time, vaccine related group. Oh my God, it was so dark. Just like the hostility and pain and anger, and it's very low vibes. So I thought, okay, this is not going to work for me because I'm already like in this crisis state. And I decided, okay, what lights me up, in my whole career? And it's whenever I would get an outcome, like a video testimonial or a thank you card or whatever the hell it was, or I saw with my own eyes, someone triumph. I would just cry. I mean, I could cry talking about it, like I would just, tears stream down my face, like at the possibility, like this is possible. And so I decided to dedicate myself to that, like making sure whoever was listening to me knows that literally anything can be healed, literally. And I amassed like a team of clinical volunteers, and we started publishing, right? So we published the first Graves' disease, apparently ever published, paper of somebody, from my practice who recovered without any intervention whatsoever. She was about to have her gland removed. And she's more vital than ever. We published schizophrenia outcomes, bipolar outcomes, lupus, asthma, IBS, it's just like one, because there's no like specific treatment, right? And that's what I learned from Nick was like, he did the same treatment, whether you had stage 4 breast cancer or mold toxicity. And it was tailored to you, but it was not tailored to the disease. That concept of a disease being a discrete entity that has befallen you and
this external thing that happened to you and you didn't do it to yourself.
Right. It's not an expression, of you-ness. And, this idea that if you just, like any complex system, old growth forest, or any complex system, you simply create the conditions. And then the complexity is emergent. It's a phenomenon, that takes hold. It's not something that's constructed. We wouldn't know how to build, the ecosystem of an old growth forest, for example. And, so at that point, I shifted. And at that point, I also had my online program, Vital Mind Reset. So we had outcomes coming through that. It's the same exact protocol I developed really based on my own health experience, which is not any sort of special, magical thing. It's just, again, creating those conditions, but doing it with like a fierce commitment and like a no bullshit engagement of your own power of will.
I want to say it is special because it's being taught by you and it's love based. that makes healing all the difference.
And because the field grew pretty quickly, which is now pretty self-sustaining. I mean, Sayer and two of our dear friends did Vital Mind Reset for the first time, even though he's known about this thing forever, for the first time in January of this year. And all three of their lives underwent the same metamorphosis that I have seen in strangers online. Wow. I mean, this Sayer is a wellness expert, like he doesn't need my wellness program, so what was it that changed for him? It's the field. I believe that it's like, this field that is held, it's like you step into it and whatever old, self-limiting patterns that are ripe for resolution, they come into organization and you step out of it. And there's a destructive process that attends that, where things are called into question and things feel really confusing and uncertain. And, if you think about like a chrysalis, there's that, melting down of the caterpillar. It's like, is he dead? Is this a hopeless situation or is there a way out? And, there's a wriggling through of the nascent butterfly through that teeny hole and voila, so there's that signature terrain. I always remind people who are in the shit, like if you feel confused, if you feel hopeless, what's dying is your attachment to an old self, an old story, and you just got to let it happen. And the confusion is the signature. It's like disorientation, confusion, like you barely feel like the ground underneath your feet is solid, and it evolves. Whenever we learn how to feel, we recognize that feelings are alchemical. They move, they swirl, they shift. I mean, to stay in one emotion that you are actually allowing yourself to feel for more than like 2 weeks. I don't know that I've ever seen it in my practice. I mean, it's like this. It's like mercurial. We just have so little experience allowing these feelings that we, from our child programming, really existentially, experience as a threat. That they could kill us. These feelings.
Yeah. Wow. Would you say that your main type of patient are women, or is it men?
Oh yeah. I only ever, well, that's not true. I have like 4 male patients that I took with me from when I was a resident at Bellevue. And one of them actually had an incredibly miraculous outcome. But no, my practice was focused on women.
How many women would you say you've probably helped since you shifted into that mode after you wrote your first book?
That is a great question. I don't know, maybe like 1,500 or so, like wow. Personally. But I wouldn't say like I helped them, in fact, I don't even know what I did because
that was a great answer.
I mean, it's like, what did I even do? I helped them. I wouldn't say that. I would say like that I held space, it's a cheesy phrase, but in this case, it's really true. Mm-hmm. And I would say, actually, I worked in Manhattan, and Manhattan is a very yang, kind of energy, masculine kind of field. Mm-hmm. And I probably channeled some sort of paternal energy, like I was almost like, I know this may sound weird, but like almost like a benevolent father figure, I think, for a lot of these women.
Wow.
You know?
No, I totally
I
get
don't know.
that.
It's
Yeah.
like a sort of,
It was different. It was like they're used to one side of the spectrum and you show them, no, there's another side over here. And it's like,
and
oh.
that energy of like, because my approach was very almost militaristic. You wouldn't get a second appointment unless you did the protocol to the T. Do not waste my time. Don't waste your time. Are you ready? Because we're doing this, and that is the energy. It's like I charged a lot of money. I believe that's actually the investment is a part of the alchemy. My program is like an eighth of what I would charge for the same protocol in person. And it worked. The alchemical ingredients of like, this is 100% of the focus of my life right now, produced this empowerment. And I actually believe that there's a neurobiological correlate of what happened, where these women would shift out of dependency on, this abuse enabling mother archetype of the conventional medical doctor into, the regenerative neurobiology of, sort of out of learned helplessness and survival mode into, this parasympathetic capacity where the body already knows, what to do, how to do it. That's why you do one protocol and, your gut's healed, your brain's healed, your thyroid's healed, and it was a one-stop shop. And so initially I thought it was like, oh, numbers, like we have to tell hundreds and hundreds of stories. But then I really came to focus on these N of 1 outcomes that have otherwise never been reported, right? Because if you've been diagnosed, let's say, with schizophrenia, and that somebody who was on their way to be euthanized by his own mother because of how horrific his experience of medicated schizophrenia was. If you know that he could recover, then that's all you kind of need, right? Like all you kind of need is to know that somebody did it. And that's this sort of morphic resonance concept that once it happens once, the field is generated and it becomes more possible.
Like the pathway is connected. So then it's a little easier to tap into that same healing process.
Exactly.
Well, I like that. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I love that you said holding space, because that's, I've noticed that I had my own experience with the medical industry and with my girlfriend. And she was actually with one doctor. We went to 8 different doctors, and one of the doctors said that she had a mild case of Stevens-Johnson syndrome. So her skin was just like peeling like alligator skin. It was intense. But I had my own experience of shaming and don't go to that. Don't go to the alternative practice because they don't know what they're talking about. I'm the MD. And that's not holding space. That's not love-based. That's ego. That's all this other stuff. And it always kept us in a confused state. We're like, what's going on? Nobody knows what's going on. There's 8 doctors. And you just went to the opposite side of the spectrum. It's like, okay, whatever comes in, I'm going to listen. I'm going to hear them. I'm going to recognize that they're having a human experience and it's real for them. So there must be something there, right? And that makes all the difference.
Yeah. I think though, intuitively, when I was in practice, I told my patients, because I was always involved with their like partners and, family members or whatever, because these are like high stakes, high risk, end of the line kind of folks. And I would always say to their support system, I don't want to hear the word worried. I don't want to hear the word concerned. Ever. Do not ever contact me and tell me that you're worried about my patient. Okay. And I don't even know where I got that from. It's just like a pet peeve. But now I think from, a psychospiritual perspective, looking back, there is a sort of indemnification of the victim consciousness that can happen when you are a compassionate bystander. That is actually more disabling to the patient, if we want to call them a patient, or the experiencer of struggle, than pretty much anything else, right? Like if you were just kind of shitty and like, what the hell, you've been to 8 doctors and go figure this out. There's something in that, go figure this out, which actually implies she can figure this out, right? Like she's got this, right? However, if you were somebody who was like, well, are you sure you took, your, whatever it was, like your right meds or supplements? And I don't know, it just seems like it's gone on for a long time and I'm just worried about you. That kind of codependent triangulation.
I see. It's like perpetuating the victim mentality.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. It's a fine line. Then you got to step up, but also recognize that it's an issue in their body. Wow. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I've said, and I'll say it again, that I think victim consciousness is the only human pathology. And it's the origin of so much of what we would otherwise call evil, is this illusory disempowerment. I mean, it's the grand illusion that we do not have world generating, world creating power. We do. Tapping into that is terrifying. Like, I don't know if you've ever had an experience where you're like recognizing just how much freedom and control you have in a given situation. It's really uncomfortable. Like, it's really nice to just have like one or two choices, or like, oh, maybe I'll move to like the neighborhood near mine or whatever. But like, what if you can move anywhere in the world, right? And now it's been made clear to you that this, the sky's the limit kind of a thing. So yeah, the victim consciousness, I think I dislodged early on in working with the women that I worked with, by simply reflecting, like, there's nothing wrong with you. There never was. And you have everything you need to do this, what you said you wanted to do, which is to emancipate yourself from a system that you're telling me has not served you and maybe worse. So there's no I never freaked out. I mean, I'm probably at any given time, 30% of my practice was suicidal, like that. I just didn't flinch because I knew that it's part of the terrain. Also because I have felt that kind of like surrendered hopelessness of like, oh my gosh, can I do this next lifetime? It's so painful.
I'm already like, every time I meditate, I'm like tapping into my higher self and be like, okay, this is it, guys. This is it. This is the last one. I want to go to the next vibrational frequency when I'm out of this reality.
I want to come back as a cat.
Yeah. Wow. I just want to say, I want to thank you for the way that you're healing, because that way is creating empowered women. And I want to name one that has gone above and beyond. You probably know who I'm going to talk about. Yeah. And she and her family, they have, I honestly think because of you, giving them that opportunity to see another perspective, gave that whole family the ability to take back their power and like be true leaders in this industry. And that person is Ali Zek. Yes. You have just impacted her life so much that it's created so many waves moving forward. I mean, I'm wearing one of those shirts from Alex. I don't want to say the name, but there it is. So a question about her real quick. What was different that you did to her that she went ahead and, and became who she is now and leading a lot of this charge? What did you do in her process that gave her that power?
Nothing. Like really. I mean, she's such a perfect example of somebody who, it's like, I had this image of like, it's like this, like a fairy, right? Who's like wearing this garbage bag or something, like comes in my office and I like know that it's a fairy underneath there. And like, I'm like, okay, abracadabra, and they take the bag off and they're like, oh, I'm a fairy, but like, you were the whole time, and that you were under a spell, right? So maybe there is some kind of, I don't know, moment of transfer of power, and the fact that I am an MD and yada, yada, saying things that acupuncturists and Ayurvedic practitioners have been saying for, millennia probably. And for me to see, it's like I have a capacity, I think a lot of women have, maybe men too, but I don't know, I think a lot of women have, where I can see the potential. Like I can see the highest expression of someone.
I'm a little bit like that. I'm really good at, I'm really good at like connecting people to create, teams. And I can see like, oh, this person can go all the way here. Yeah. I'm going to put those people
it's
together.
like it's almost like, I mean, I can't perceive auras, but it's almost something like that, where I can look at somebody like her who was carrying multiple diagnoses, who was, physically unwell at the time, who was, on her way to state hospitalization. And I could see on some level who she is today. And it's just a process, of getting from point A to point B. And she's a good example of that. Who was it? Cahill Gibran or somebody's quote about like, the light that comes through the wound is like proportional. Now I'm like bastardizing, butchering the quote. It's nothing like that, but it's proportionate to the wound, right? So it's like how dark it gets for you. And we want to experience this contrast, right? Like I believe, and I know she would say, I've heard her say, in fact, like I wouldn't change any of it, because her experience in the trenches was like the ultimate spiritual training grounds. You cannot replace that, and it needs to be perfectly tailored in timing and the characters and all of the variables to your expression of your gifts. And, while she is like a powerhouse beyond, I was even thinking about her this morning. I was like, what an amazing thing to have purely positive karma with someone, like I've literally never had anything but love-based interactions with this woman. There are not many people in my life I can say that about, and the trenches that she was in when we first started working together, she had, free license to do all the kinds of things that I've experienced with women I've worked with, which, it's like name calling. It gets real ugly, because there's like a primitive, almost like stage of, I don't know, like burning off of some old emotional. It's like when you think about these meds, they arrest your consciousness, right? So whatever went subterranean when you started to take, Prozac or Effexor or whatever it is, it's just been waiting in the wings and in your tissues, right? So it's like it gets released and dumped, like often, even if it's done slowly, it's like quite a tidal wave. And it's just, I never experienced that with her. And I will say, that I know hundreds of women who in perhaps like quieter ways have expressed gifts. I mean, I have a huge piece of art on my wall that I commissioned, from someone who her Instagram handle is grounded in color, who recovered herself from so-called bipolar disorder and associated medication. I never met this woman. And I mean, her art, I have another piece she's working on right now. Like her artwork is so touches my soul. It's so incredible. And to think that she was walking around the world thinking she was like broken and sick. I mean, that's how it is that you are, it's the Luciferian inversion, right? Like you are somehow convinced, because you have been enculturated to actually believe this and conditioned around this, right? You're convinced that your greatest gift and the source of your power and your light is your greatest liability and your, unhealing wound and, this aspect of you that is shameful and needs to be managed. That inversion is what needs to be corrected in the process of coming off of medications and exiting that system. And trust me, you'd be surprised to learn that for many of these people, there is a moment where they recognize that they don't actually want to give up their patient status, that there was a lot that they were actually getting.
It feels good. It feels familiar.
Validating. Yeah. And there's a lot, even behaviorally, that, we get out of. It's like you don't have to really be deeply in touch with your desires and your needs if you just get to say, like, I'm sick, I can't, So there's strangely a resistance to what would seem so obviously appealing, right, that emerges, and it's a whole process of stepping into a new skin that's totally unfamiliar. And I think Allie would be the first to say, like, the journey is harrowing, and it's long, like it's years long. Yeah. And obviously I didn't, go through the trials that she did, and the architecture of her process is familiar to me from my own. So that's the only place from which I could ever, support somebody is like, I know what it feels like, I mean, I've had multiple identities even in the past decade, I know what it is to shed a skin.
I love this because it goes back to what doctor docere actually means, which is to a teacher, and it's based on what you're saying is like, oh, I'm healing these people who are in turn coming back and healing me. If that piece of art is you're seeing it every day, that there's healing in that, and so that's beautiful. I mean, that's the medical system I want to be a part of.
Right. Right. It's like
where it's not just this guy telling me you're wrong, and here I'm the God here, and let me tell you what I was taught.
Absolutely, it's an exchange. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to kind of just discuss. This conversation is going really well, and it's already like 45 minutes in. So kind of go a little bit into what's been happening in 2020, 2021 now. I really want to know your perspective on all this. So first part of the question is, has your opinion changed about the what in these last 6 months? And what is your opinion in general about it? I just, I'm sure you've been asked this before, but I've been trying to get a perspective of every doctor that I interview. What is your perspective on it?
So you asked me earlier, and I realized, as happens in these conversations, like I didn't even really answer, but you asked me earlier, like, how did I have almost like a rehearsal, for what ended up coming on the stage in, 2020. And like you, or maybe I think you told me it was like you were like a month delayed. But right when this dropped, I knew, not like I knew exactly what was going on, but like I smelled a rat immediately, right? Also, I had stopped believing in germ theory. So, I already don't believe in pandemic.
Yeah, it was very easy. It was like, oh, there's nothing external that's going to mess with me. Yeah.
Right. And like, then you look back to the rehearsals that were, publicly documented on the internet. I mean, it's just, and so when I came out with a video in March, that's what my team was like, don't do it, because I had moved from New York in this very masculine field that I was occupying. I moved to Miami pretty much again to save my own life, because I knew on a soul level that I needed to start to balance. And I said, you know what? I had published a paper in a peer-reviewed journal on the psychobiology of. Am I not supposed to say that word? Okay.
That's all right.
Whatever. I'm not good at self-censoring, in case you haven't noticed. And I felt like at this point, so when was that? Like 2017, 18? Everyone knows how to access the information that they want. If you want to apply these interventions to your child, including on the day of birth, and or to your teen girl or your adult self, you do you, okay? You do you, enjoy. Those of us who have, seen the light and walked, away from this system, I guess I started to feel like it's not my responsibility any longer, to save anybody from themselves. And so I really walked away. I closed down a group that I was running. I walked away from this, and I started to focus on mothering and dancing and growing food and, learning a lot of things that I'd never taken the time to learn, like guitar and sewing. And, I started adopting animals, and I,
hip hop dancing.
Yeah, that I was already doing in New York. Oh, okay. And, but I began feminizing, and I really, had this beautiful sisterhood of women. And it was such a moment, in my life history, when this hit, it was like, I forgot all that, it's like I strapped on my costume. It was like I reverted,
took your sword out,
reverted right back, like immediately back. And then for months I was like, I'm going to figure out what's going on. And here's the proof and all the details. And it was like, that same sort of like, I stopped even dancing. It was like that like creepy energy of infiltration that you consent to when you allow yourself to be dragged behind the car of these psyops. And so it didn't take that long. By the time we did the Thank You Body rally last year, I already, once again, was recognizing, how about I focus on what I know to be amazing about being a human being and the capacity that we have to learn about ourselves through our experiences of so-called illness, right? And I shifted again away from the newsreel. And I'm still at that point where honestly, like my girlfriend yesterday was like, do you know if like to come back to the US, we have to, take the jab or whatever? And I was like, girlfriend, I don't know. She was like, what do you mean you don't know? It's like, I don't know. I stopped paying attention because at this point, if you do not know that opting out of this system is the way to preserve connection to your soul, your humanity, and your experience of agency in this lifetime, then it's not for me to interfere with your journey or your trajectory. Who am I to say that, your Aunt Barbara who wants to take the shot, who am I to say that she shouldn't or that I know what is best? I do not know what is supposed to be happening. And that's why I love Byron Katie's work. It's like, what is happening is what should be happening. And we know that because it's happening, right? So the more you fight with reality, like the more you end up with your panties in a bunch and then your life sucks. Like, so we can really release people to their experience because this ain't about science. It is not about information. I've even wondered if science is dead. Like I really enjoy science,
A religion started called scientism.
Exactly. And it's dead and maybe unrecoverable because it's so corrupted, and it's so far science from being a system of understanding the natural world. And now it has become a biopolitical control weapon. And so I while I have deeply researched the adverse effects on, the human system of injecting any of the potential ingredients, including, what we're told is in this one. And I am so far in the PSYOP category of conspiracy theorist, conspiracy realist, that I don't even believe what we're told. I don't take the bait of any of it. I just assume that they're, wagging our tails whenever anything is reported by mainstream media. This is a point of contention between me and Sayer. It's like, I do not believe one single thing, not one single thing that makes international headlines. Not one. None of it is true. Right? Like
I have to agree with you.
Bombs dropping, rockets launching, like you name it, to me.
I've seen enough videos of that stuff being orchestrated.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, they can do. It's like a movie. I mean, it's like a movie. I'm an actor. I'm in production. I've been in movie sets all over the world.
Exactly.
They do it. They freaking do it.
And to get to the point where you can see that that is what media is for. It has not been for so many decades a means of disseminating actual realistic, information to the masses. That is not what it's for.
I would say never. I would say it was created for ideological subversion.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. So, for me, I don't know, that I believe even other than colleagues I have who like independently detected graphene oxide and things like that. Like, I don't know that I would believe anything otherwise. And I really am at a point where it's like, I don't know anyone actually in my lived life who has opted for that intervention. So I've already created a reality for myself where it's like not even relevant. And that does not mean I'm not experiencing divisiveness and other flavors of this same energy of polarity. And so to me, it's not really about winning this little war against the vaccine passport. And it was about that for me for many, many years. Because we saw, those of us in this activism work, we saw this vaccine passport coming. I mean, that's a big part of why I moved to Florida, because Sayer and I were like, they're going to hit the airlines first. I mean, this was years and years ago, and it wasn't it's like a known thing. So this is playing out exactly as it was intended. And I think the degrees of freedom that we really have, apart from, actual literal legislative action, like he, co-founded Stand for Health Freedom and things like that, is internal, right? And it's about how are we interacting with, polar opposites, like how is it that we are relating to that which is other, and feels scary and threatening. And that's something that I'm working on because, I've never worn a mask. And, we had friends who invited us to dinner early in this process, right? And they were like, okay. And anyway, they were like, we're social distancing. And so,
so yeah, they're trying to be
we're
doing the whole thing.
We're just not going to hug you hello. And like, we're just going to set the table a certain way or whatever. And I was like, dude, we're not coming then. Like there are consequences to your caution that are in the realm of, human relations that I require when I interact with people, so like, we're not coming. And that's when I started to perceive like these two realities don't have an obvious complementarity, right? If you are afraid of my body and my germiness or whatever, and for me to interact with somebody in a mask, for example, is a dehumanizing experience of proportions I refuse to regularly engage in, how do we co-occupy the same space? I don't know.
So there's been a lot of talk recently about, if you did get the because of jobs, because of whatever pressures you felt in your life that you needed to, there's a lot of regret happening now. A lot of people that have awakened to a lot of things these last few months, and they're like, oh my gosh, what did I do? And I've been getting, I'm not even kidding, probably hundreds of DMs of like, my aunt got this, I got this, my sister, my brother, my daughter, my son, whatever. So there's been a lot of talk about like, what's the antidote? How can we get rid of this? How can we detox our bodies? And, I guess the question is to you, is there some way to do it? And have you heard of urotherapy as being one way to do it?
Meaning like urine autotherapy?
Urine autotherapy.
Mm-hmm. So I have believed, so as somebody, again, remember, I was in the cult. So I am super sensitive to the controlled opposition, right? Which to me is greenwashed, allopathy. And integrative medicine, I think, is the most dangerous form of medicine there is. I've believed that from the moment I woke up. It's pick a lane, okay? Pick a lane. Why? Because your belief, your commitment to a specific field of belief is what affords you the outcomes that otherwise are not going to be available. I have not spent 1 second of my career learning about that because I believe you should never get one. Okay? Not you or him or her, whatever. Whoever is asking me, my response is don't get it. And if that means you lose your job, you're homeless, whatever it means, that to me is the path of your reclamation. You may not be ready for that. And so whatever antidote, is going to be necessary for you if you chose to retain your job or stay in your life that is totally incoherent with your value system and you self-violated, right, in service of this hierarchical model, you will find whatever it is that you need in order to engage the ritual initiation to yourself. Because whether it's urine therapy or homotoxicology or whether it's, chelation or whatever it is, what it's going to be doing for you is bringing you back into the field of alignment with your own agency, power, and personal responsibility. So I don't think there is such a thing as a detox. We don't even know what is in it. It's like absurd. We don't even know what it's in it. What do you do?
There's a lot of speculation on everything right now. So
yeah. I mean, are you going to go meet with a shaman or are you going to do coffee enemas? I don't know. Do whatever you want, but make sure that you are in charge of the process of healing yourself. Because if you re-engage that same field of waiting to be told what it is that you need to do for yourself, I'm sure people, I know people from the, autism world who literally become professional patients for a lifelong.
The body even starts to want it, right? So because it's gotten so used to that system that it needs it. Yeah.
It's the same consciousness. So, I that being said, yes, I have had in my practice, vaccine recovery cases, if you want to call them that, mostly HPV vaccine. Is my protocol like specialized for that? No. Does it generate the conditions for your body to self-heal? Yes. Is that what you need to do through my protocol or something else? Yes. And I do believe that once you open to that desire is the most powerful force, in my opinion. Once you open to that, it'll happen for you. It's going to happen for you. You're going to be fine. You can recover. Anyone can recover. It's about that shift of power and that shift of readiness. That being said, I have recently become very interested in urine autotherapy. It has different names, I guess.
I just interviewed Dr. Edward Group yesterday or 2 days ago on this.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm about to put out a newsletter about, my experiences and folks that I've spoken to about it, because whenever something comes into my field like 3 times, I know it's time to explore. But this happened like pretty recently, right?
Yeah.
And, I've been, because of my mentor, like a coffee enema proponent for so long. And when I learned about urine therapy, which I had only ever heard about one time, actually, from a girlfriend who recovered her 2 vaccine injured sons, like 20 something years ago.
Wow.
Through urine therapy. I never really otherwise heard about it. And then I heard about it 3 times in the space of, like a month. I was like, all right, what is this? And the more I researched, the more I found like, this is the ultimate in self-healing. It is the ultimate, you don't even need food. It's like,
oh my goodness. I love that I just captured this moment, because that's, I wanted to hear from you. Yes.
Yeah, it's so amazing. I mean, I drink my pee every day now. And
interesting. How long have you been doing it?
Probably 3 months.
Have you seen any
on my face? Yeah. I mean, I like to, I'm a biohacker. Like, I like to self-experiment. I guess I'm technically not, because I don't like measure the outcomes, but I look for, what I notice. And I am actually pretty sensitive. It's like a joke with my friends to supplements, right? Like, they're like, what are you taking, Kelly? Like, where I don't know, like supplements and me had a divorce like a couple of years ago. And so, I was like, this is really interesting. And it took a lot to get beyond the gross factor, which is real. Because again, in medical school, I was taught this is a waste product. And, through ancient lineages, Indian lineages, and also through modern application of this therapy, that appears to be a gross misapprehension of what actually, urine is. And I'm sure you've already heard this from people way more expert than me. But nonetheless, like, getting beyond that was challenging. And, I can't say I had like enough troubling me to see, it's like just sort of like a wellness strategy. But to me, it's also part of like the prepping consciousness is like, well, we have all these examples of like soldiers and downed pilots and whatever, like surviving off of their urine. Like, this is a
it's real, man. Yeah. And what you just said, you can survive on it without food, because it's, the way the doctor explained is it's every morning your body is creating this medicine to rebalance your system on the things that it needs, because there's the 8 essential amino acids are in there to create all that good stuff, and proteins and all that. But yeah, this you can survive off of your pee.
Yeah, I had a girlfriend the other day. She was like, "Oh my God, I got stung by like a wasp. It's so painful." Who knew? I was like, "Girl, pee on your hand. It'll be better."
I burned my finger, and usually, it pulsates and it hurts for like, I don't know, 30 minutes or a little more. Peed on it, couple minutes, 2 to 5 minutes. It was gone. I'm like, it's real. This is real.
You gotta self-experiment. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to you. Like, who knows? Because I even started to get into like the science, because I think even Sayers indexed something on Green Info, whatever, and I was like, who cares anymore? Like, that's not a method of internalizing what is relevant to me. I have to experience it, and then I will know. And that's true of everything right now. You have to experience what you're feeling called to explore, because the guru model is dead. It's dead by necessity. I closed my practice for that reason, because I recognized that no matter how much I am a champion for patients to reclaim their own power, I still am an MD, I still am in a power position, and I still am in that dyadic parent-child dynamic. And there's not really a way around it. because of our conditioning at this point. And I started to see that my outcomes in private practice relative to those in my online program, where I'm barely involved, were slower and stickier and ultimately less compelling. And so I really think that, and that doesn't mean you don't get support. It doesn't mean you can't be around like minds. You can't source information to validate your intuition from those around you. And it doesn't mean you can't have like a mentor or a coach. In all the things I've learned recently that I'm total novice at, I love the mentorship model. It's temporary, right? It's just to get you, your legs under you, and then you figure out how to walk. And that's really, I think, the field that we're entering is super uncomfortable and scary because there isn't an authority outside of you.
There's nobody like there to catch you if you make a mistake. It's like you got to learn.
That's part of the process, and these days, I mean, I'm sure you also have had your own experiences with controlled opposition and, people not being who they seem to be. And, we don't know about anything beyond our own intuition. And
which is why, this discernment, you have to discern, you have to connect the intellect to the body and discern, or else it's so chaotic. The information is so chaotic right now, or information in general. There's so much of it that you can't trust anything. You can't trust anything online. So the opposite is what? Discern individually.
Right. Couldn't agree more.
Wow. This was such an amazing experience for me personally. And I'm so grateful that you were able to give me this time and your energy and your effort. Thank you. So last thing, I like to leave the last word to the interviewee. If you want to plug something or leave a piece of advice for people, moving forward in this reality.
Yeah. I mean, I had no concept of how relevant a toolkit, what even what I put in my last book, Own Yourself, would be to this moment, because there is, in that disorientation and confusion that so many who are, let's say, waking up because they made a medical decision that they recognized shortly thereafter was a self-violation, like, where do you go, right? What do you do? There's that feeling of helplessness that's, so much more painful than the feeling of like, I was victimized by, I'm going to be angry, I was victimized by the system. And so, I mean, if it calls to you as a self-implemented toolkit, that's what my entire platform is devoted to, is getting you started there. And so, over at kellybroganmd.com.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I'm so appreciative again. And I know my family's down in South Florida, so when I'm down there, I'm gonna hit you guys up because I really want to. I would love to give you guys a big hug.
That would be amazing. It's great to connect.
Thank you so much. We'll see you. I'll see you again some other time. That was an amazing interview with Dr. Kelly Brogan. I'm so grateful that all of you were able to hear it and listen to it and experience it just like I did. If you want to dive deeper into Kelly Brogan's work and being able to reset your mindset, make sure you check her Instagram out. It's Kelly Brogan MD, or you can go and check out her website at kellybroganmd.com. She's an amazing soul. And if you want to learn more on how you can take that power back to heal yourself on a cellular level, like on a very grounded level, she's a very good source to start at, a very good place to start at. Now, if you want to know more about crypto, you can definitely check out my website. It's otogomes.live. And I have a free training session there that you can check out. That's 90 minutes long and goes really deep into crypto and the NFT space and everything that we're discussing around the metaverse. So make sure you check it out. Thank you all again for listening. I'm super excited to be doing this for you all. And thank you for your energy that you're providing to listen to me talk and all the people that I am interviewing and connecting with. And always remember to gamify your abundance. Love you.